Hey everyone, it's Andrew from Red Circle Pottery. Today I'm going to throw for you a pie plate. I think these are a great place to start when learning pottery because you don't really have to learn how to pull a wall up. I know they can be intimidating for a lot of folks, and I think in some ways it's considered more difficult, but I actually think this might be an easier place to start. And the most likely reason is because it teaches you how to push the clay up from the bottom of the pot, which is the only way to get the wall to rise when you're flattening out a large disc of clay. And then you need to form a lip on it and make essentially a nice kind of shape for whatever your contents are going to be. So I think it's great to learn how to kind of ride the bat or your wheel head, and then you're just kind of getting underneath there. And that's the same kind of technique you're going to use when pulling up the wall of a pot. You're really going to kind of push the clay in for the bottom, especially stuff that's more like a bowl shape. You're going to push a lot of clay inwards, and you don't want to leave a lot of clay where the foot is going to be. You are going to use a lot of clay with this shape, and the intention is to usually trim a lot of that away. So for what I'm going to do today, I'm going to throw 4 pounds, and this one doesn't have a trimmed foot. You can oftentimes just leave these flat and then just clean up the foot a little bit, just do a little trimming on it. But I'm going to trim an actual ring on this because I think it's important to also get some learning out of your pots, and so having a nice trimmed foot isn't a bad thing either. You really, it's an aesthetic choice. But I also wanted to show you how to trim. I think these are a great sort of opportunity to learn how to trim. There's lots of surface area. It's relatively stable. It has a low center of gravity, so you're not going to tip over your plate when you're trimming. So it's going to help you when you're learning how to do that. So let's go ahead and get to it, and I'll show you how to throw this form. Okay, so here we got 4 pounds of clay. And like always, we're going to work on centering. And so with the pie plate, or any plate, the advantage is when we're centering is usually we're trying to keep it somewhat narrow while we're centering, but we can also just go a little bit wide, because ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to center it right into the ground for the most part. But we still want to get the clay relatively round. It's like all big things, once the wider it goes, any imperfections will start to show on the outside edge. So we still want to get all those wobbles and little knots and what other little clay imperfections are in there. We want to get those worked out. And like all centering, we just want to guide that into our right hand. We're just going to keep kind of driving it into the bat. And then once it's pretty well centered, like we have now, then we're going to start doing the work of driving it down. And we got some high and low spots, and we're going to fix those as we go here. And we'll ultimately end up taking a rib and we're going to finish smoothing that out. And so the reason you want to work with a lot of clay is if you are going to trim, you want to leave enough clay that there's enough clay to sort of work with and add a ring or take some clay away and then not go through the bottom of your pot. So here's a good spot to really have a long wooden rib. If you don't have one, then you can just take your time with your hands and smooth, but having a larger sort of scalloped rib is going to help you create a little bit of a contour and just sort of smooth things out. And so I'm just kind of starting from kind of the middle and then I'm working my way to the center. I don't want this to like catch and dig in. And so I'm adding just the most slight grade to it. So it's a little bit lower in the center and a little bit higher on the outside. And you can kind of see it start to create a little bit of a contour. Hopefully you can see that. So it's a little higher on the outside. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can choose what kind of slope or how you want the pot to act. I think most plates and pie plates, everything's designed to sort of flow to the center. And so and I always have a ruler handy so I can kind of see where I'm at. So if I'm going for like a 10 or 11 inch, I kind of see where it's at. We're a little over 11 inches. So for a 10-inch pie plate, using this rib also is going to get the compression that we want to make sure that our bottom doesn't crack. Okay. And now, this is the part that's relevant to all pottery when working with the clay that's at the bottom of the wheel head or underneath your pot. So you're going to need to learn how to push that edge up. And all it really means is that you're just getting underneath it. So this is really important. I think this is a lot of beginners sort of miss this detail that when you're pulling, you're getting underneath the clay and you're pulling it upwards. Well, same thing here. We're getting underneath it, riding along that bat edge, or just riding along the bat, and you can see that, like we're pushing all the clay that's there. There's no clay, like you can see the bat turn brown. And that's what we're after. We're just pushing, and that's just like folding it up because the clay can't go right, and it can't really go left because there's more clay there, so its only option is to go up. And that's what we're after. And then we just kind of measure again to see where we're at. We're at 10 inches. And for the most part, that's kind of how the wall is pulled up. And now all we're going to do is we're just going to spend a little time thinning that out and just giving it a little bit more height. And just think of your fingers like a record player. Following the grooves, you want to be touching all the clay on the way up. And you're just thinning it out, giving it a little bit of profile. And there you have it. Now if we want to do something a little bit more fun, we can also just do a little bit of texturing. And I like doing this for plate. And that adds a nice little texture, a little pattern. It's quite fun. And that's all there is to it. You can throw these pretty quickly. They're not terribly difficult. Like I said, there's not a lot of pulling involved. It's really just, it's mostly centering work and your ability to sort of just push under that edge and just lift it up a little bit. And then you'll get a little bit of practice doing some pulling just to get this a little thinner around the edges. Just clean this up just a little bit. And that's it. And now we're moving on to trimming. Now, unfortunately, I lost the head-on footage that I had.
So I kind of have to do some narration here just to account for the lost audio that I had as well. But for the most part, I mean, this is pretty straightforward. This is still a pretty good angle and view that I had. You're going to see my hands kind of flail about wildly as I'm talking through things. But what I'm kind of trying to explain here is when you get started with trimming, you're really looking at, sort of truing up the very, very flat bottom. And since this is going to ultimately be a footed ring, I start making a pass to sort of clean up the bottom. This is also a relatively thin bottom, so I want to be careful that I don't go through it too much, or go too aggressively deep. I really just want to create a profile of a ring and, basically create that nice edge. So I'm doing a little bit of cutting away in the very flat center, and then I come in at an angle and sort of undercut my ring and start to create that sort of form and profile for that ring. And so I'm just making some pretty clean passes. The first ones are a little aggressive just to cut some material away, and then I do some sort of smoothing passes where I'm just much more consistent and slower. Always thinking about this like a record, just like a record needle touches all the grooves as it plays a song. Your needle tool is just following that edge all the way towards the outside. And we just keep doing some passes until we're pretty happy with the results. So there's not a whole lot left here. There's really just a matter of kind of cleaning it up. And then, you want to think about angles as well. So when you're coming into trim, flat, there's still always a little bit of a taper to my tool. So I'm always cutting with one corner or the other. And then because I'm using this Giffen grip here, that the wide end starts to hit those bumpers, and so I switch to the sort of the rounded edge. And I usually like using the rounded edge for sort of the cleaner, smaller cuts that I want to make, just to kind of get underneath an edge. And so it helps avoid, the bumper. And here I'm showing using, more of a narrow tool, so I don't have to worry about hitting those bumpers. But if you feel like something cuts better than another tool, and you like the way it sort of gets in there and it works, and you try different tools. For the most part, I use this one for 80-90% of my cutting. Sometimes I switch it up to a fatter, wider tool, and sometimes I use ones with curves to them. It just really depends on what shape and profile you're going for. So I want to thank everybody for watching. If you like what you see, go ahead, leave a like and a comment and subscribe, and thanks for watching.